Dr. Katherine, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Before we started this, you started to say something, and I said, stop, hold it there, let's talk about it. And you said, when you were younger, you used to be not so nice a person.
A horrible person.
So explain, what does that mean?
I'll give you one example, one story, but there's, so many. I remember in particular, I think I was around maybe 26, 27 years old, and I felt so bad about myself that the only way to feel somewhat good about myself was to bring other people down. This is not a proud thing for me to say. This is not me saying, oh, this is a great memory. This is horrible to admit, but I just vividly remember it was actually in Toronto, in Yorkville, went out with to a bar with my brother and one of my best friends. And it got to the point that they actually both walked away from me. And I remember my brother walking away from me, just shaking his head. And I remember my dad, when he was disappointed in me, used to shake his head in the same way. And to this day, I will never, ever get that memory out of my head. That's the kind of person I was.
So I don't know if I was that bad, but certainly in a professional environment, I look back on some of my behavior, and I think that's probably what it was. I don't think I was a bad person, but I think some of my behavior was just awful. And I know over the years, I've been here now 22 years, I've had a few jobs. Some I've lost, I think, because of myself and my behavior. But I've tried to, I'm 58 now, soon to be 59. And so I think as we get a little bit older, we look back and we recognize I screwed that one up. Have you gone and, because I've done this with some, I don't think I've done it with everybody, but have you gone back and apologized?
Yes. Yes.
What?
And it's never too late. I think oftentimes we wait for the perfect time and create the perfect apology at the perfect moment, in the perfect situation. There is no time. The time is actually 5 minutes ago when you should have said that apology. If it's received or not, that's a moot point. Self-respect is saying, I've done something wrong. This is not going to make it right, but I'm going to give it a go.
And I'm curious, the response that you got was
mixed.
Right?
Mixed.
So some would say, I really appreciate it. Others, it's too late. That ship has sailed.
Yep.
And it was just something that you wanted to do. Is it kind of like in the Alcoholics Anonymous sort of playbook where you go back and you make the apology?
I think oftentimes when we are giving an apology, we're trying to prove, say, this is why I did what I did. This is almost like you're proving you're right in a way. But making an apology isn't to prove anything. It's just to make things right as much as you can. But that's not up to you. It's a two-way street. So some of the responses were, too little, too late. Some of them were, hatred, anger, blah, blah, blah. And others were, we knew you were going through a rough time. And I think that's something to recognize as well. The people who actually knew who you really were at that time and what was actually going on for you, they give you a free get out of jail card, whatever that's called, because they're likely going to go through something similar. I think everyone deserves a second chance. That's my opinion.
So when you were 26 and you were in Yorkville and you did this, was that like a one-off? You were just behaving really badly and it was maybe a period that was going on for weeks or months or a couple of years, or was that kind of your character?
So it started when I was about 12 years old. At the time, this is in, what would it be, 1990, I guess. So anorexia was actually cool. So the goal was to eat so little that you fainted at high school. And I'll always remember there was one girl who actually achieved it, and I was so jealous of her. But I was from a family of Europeans, I mean, as soon as you open your eyes, it's are you hungry? Do you want a full pig and Danish and salami? It was just food was everything. So I really sucked at being anorexic. And at the same time, I actually loved food. All I wanted to do was be a chef. So it was this weird push-pull that I was dealing with, how to fit in with a cool group to be as skinny as possible. But then also the heritage of, loving food and everything about food. And then couple that with my parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. We were living in France at the time. So here I was, different environment, different situation, put that all into a salad bowl and mix it up, and you got a recipe for low self-esteem and low self-worth. So you look for validation, right? I like me if you like me. So that's really when it started. And then it sort of snowballed from there. 15, I got caught up with the wrong crowd, started doing drugs, started selling drugs, and then it just sort of kept on going from there. Got caught stealing at the body shop. It took me over 30 years to walk into a body shop, and I swear I walked in like this. My hands are here. And it just sort of snowballed. And then my mom in particular saw I was going through a really rough time after being caught stealing. So I went to Rome, Italy, to school there. That sort of blossomed my love for food again, but at the same time I was dealing with this suppressed eating disorder. Came back to Toronto, and then I can continue the story, but that's a whole other lifetime. I think about a few lifetimes.
So you talked about being a people pleaser, and that's kind of one of the things that you're known for now is not, I guess it's a reformed people pleaser?
Yes. Recovering people pleaser. Recovering high-achieving people pleaser.
So that's a thing.
Says me.
Says you.
Yeah. Listen, I know I'm not the only one. I remember first using the term high-achieving people pleaser at a networking event probably 3 years ago, and it was like the entire room turned towards me and said, "What? That is exactly me." So the mindset is on one side we have this drive, this ambition in us to want to achieve. We want to be the CEO. We want to make $1 million. We want to get an A+, whatever that goal is, right? But then we get there, it usually takes years, right? And as we're achieving said goal, we're going to be learning. So by the time we achieve said goal, we're like, well, that wasn't really that big of a deal. It's like when I got my BA. Well, it's like everyone gets their BA, and then master's, and then PhD, it's whatever. And on the people pleaser side, everyone's like, you can't talk about your accomplishments that's so self-centered, like it's so arrogant. So you get held back. So a great example that I think everyone can associate with is you achieve something amazing. First thing you think is, I'm going to build my brand. I'm going to post it on LinkedIn, right? So like, let's say you win a big client or you have a great interview with some Canadian and you're like, I'm going to post about this on LinkedIn. This is amazing. The high achiever in you says, yeah, but my podcast isn't really that big and she's really not that big. I'm no Stephen Bartlett. And then the people pleaser says, well, you can't post about yourself. That is so arrogant. So do we post or not? No. And who knows who would have seen that post, how it could have grown your brand. And so this is how we hold ourselves back. So yes, we will achieve. Yes, we will be really nice people, but we're going to be held back on a daily basis by this funny thing called fear. Fear of never achieving enough or fear of not being liked enough. And that's the big issue of being a high-achieving people pleaser.
Do you think it's, we've become hyper aware of it now? I think because on social media, there's two things on social media that I find addictive. One is the content, of course. The other, people are hilarious, and the comments are often outrageous. And you could post something that you're proud of, or something where you're trying to be humble, maybe. But of course, you're posting it, and there is that segment of the social media commentators who will call you out on it, and no matter what it is, people will tear you down. So do you think we've become more hyper aware about being a people pleaser because of social media and because of the comments that people make, and because people can say things anonymously and get away with it?
So I think there's two sides of this coin. There is the person posting, where I think there is, and I know I'm not the only one, when I post and people say, yeah, but people want to hear from you. They want to know what's going on in your life. That's fine, but it still doesn't relieve the comfort that it's about me. And to me, it still feels, every time I post, I still feel like the world's biggest narcissist. And people will say, no, but you're not. Doesn't matter what you say. This is how I feel. And I wish I could just post like blank images and just write a lot. But that's not going to get me ahead. So here's this push-pull, right? I want to get my brand out there. The photos that are of me when I'm dressed up, and I did not wake up looking like this. I just want everyone to know, when I post a great picture of me, it gets great reach. When I don't, I don't, So there's that side. And then there's a people pleaser. Two different sides of this. One, oh my God, amazing, congratulations on that award. And then the other side, the real side of you is like, damn it, I wanted that award. She didn't deserve that. But do you post it or not? So there's two different sides. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, what you really want to say, kind of like when we were messaging today, like the honest Canadian and then the people-pleasing Canadian.
Which brings up an interesting point. We're both Canadian. Do you think...
The answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Do you think that our traits, we're in a fun way criticized for being too polite sometimes? Sometimes people who know me will say you're so not Canadian, Michael. But do you think that that Canadian part of who we are makes us intuitively lean into the people-pleasing realm?
Yes, and this is why I struggled with that initial question about can people-pleasing be good or bad, because
Right.
I think what makes Canadians Canadian, and this is my thoughts on it, is that, I don't know about you, but when I grew up, I had every mixed race. I mean, when I was in Toronto, I had every single type of friend, and I never, ever thought anything of it at all. And then I'm not saying this is, it's different. In different countries, it's just different. So I was raised to look at a person for a person, understand that there's a story behind that person. So is that people-pleasing, or is that just being a good person? Is that just understanding that everyone has a backstory? And this is where, it's so hard to answer. Like, when does being nice become unhealthy?
Right.
That's the question that I haven't answered yet. Like, where is that point where you sort of fall off the cliff?
Because you want to extend yourself and you want to put yourself out there. At least I do. I don't know that I necessarily wanted to when I was younger. And sometimes even now there's a little bit of uncomfortableness where it just feels a little bit performative, right? Mm-hmm. But you want to sort of let people know that you're willing to help, or you're willing to, apologize when somebody feels offended. But I do wonder sometimes if you're just perceived to be too much of a people pleaser, even though, well, no, I'm just trying to be a nice guy. Like, do you know where that line is?
So it sounds like vulnerable narcissism.
Right.
So narcissism, as we know, big topic, me, right? So vulnerable narcissism, and this is a case that I'm building here, is actually can spawn out of people pleasing, where you start giving so much. It's about you, not me. I'm going to suppress my discomfort and make sure that you're always first. You're always comfort. It gets to the point where, what about me?
Right.
And it starts to become almost like the martyrdom is not the right word, but literally just vulnerable narcissism where, it's my turn. It's almost like when selfishness actually becomes very unhealthy selfishness, if that makes sense. And I think that's a tipping point.
So this might be really difficult to ask, but is there a line between being vulnerable, especially on social media, as we were talking about earlier, because that seems to do really well when people are vulnerable, and being too vulnerable? In
keynote speaking, it's called therapy from the stage. It's when you have not built this is about the audience and not me storyline yet. It's about, again, almost like that narcissistic me, woe is me. And that's why it took me a long time actually to start talking about my own stories in an effective way on stage. Because no one likes, woe is me. And also, if you're worried about, arrogance and so forth, it takes a long time. I don't know. Have you seen this?
Ooh, like a therapy session. Is this it? Go.
Yeah. Tell me about your childhood. Listen, I think it's like when a 17-year-old wants to be a life coach. Good for you. Take a little time to go out and really F up in the world and then talk to me about that. And I think, a lot of times when people go to therapy, as in to become a counselor, when I did my post-grad in counseling, half of us were like, we're wounded healers. Half of it is we want to figure out who the hell are we? Why are we the way that we are? So I think there's some of that you are going to be learning along the way. But at the end of the day, you have to ask, is this post about me or is this post about someone else? And that's what I always do before I post. I always picture typically a woman in bed. She's had the worst day ever. You know, her kids are a-holes, like her boss is an a-hole, everything's going wrong, and she's scrolling, and all I think about is my post just going to make her day a little bit better? Not better, just a little bit better.
And you think making it a little bit better is if you can post something that she can relate to.
Yep, yep.
So how did you get to the point where 26-year-old who is maybe not nice to somebody who maybe recognizes that I wasn't nice back then? What was it for you that changed?
I remember the day, and this is no eat, pray, love moment. There's no Hollywood light bulb, moment, which sucks because I think you need one for like a Hollywood movie to be produced about you. So,
but we can
manufacture
find that,
one,
no
right?
problem.
Yeah. But it was right after my PhD graduation. My life was absolute just a gong show, and I was dumped by yet another guy. I was like the ultimate stage 5 clinger. So I was girl in the bar you didn't want to lock eyes with for more than 3 seconds, because I would start planning our wedding right then and there. Right. I was so incredibly lonely and desperate. So, of course, another guy dumps me. I mean, like, is it really that big of a deal to break into someone's phone and delete messages? I'm like, we're all friends here, whatever. Anyways, so he dumped me.
So we shouldn't do that, right?
Listen, this is not an advice show. You do you, Bo. You do you. Anyways, so my buddy, his name is Luigi, he hadn't heard from me for a couple of days, and I was a binge eater at that time, so I would just lock myself behind closed doors and just binge to the point of pain. Came over, and I can be just like a little tad dramatic, you could say. And I was like, why is everything going wrong in my life? Like, why is this freaking another guy dump me? I'm like, I'm Canadian, for God's sake. I'm a good person. Like, shouldn't good things be happening to me? And he had the patience of a toddler. And he said, like, Shorty, you do realize that you're the common denominator for everything that's going on in your life, right? Unfortunately, like, I would love, love, love for this to be the moment where the light bulb goes off and you're like, yes, but the problem is you cannot see the picture of your life because you're inside that frame. And the only thing that you can do at that time, or the easiest thing I should say that you can do, is point outwards. It's not me, it's you. It's all the guys. It's, the economy's fault that I can't get a job. It's because of enter your excuse here. It took me so many years to recognize that life is never, ever going to get easier. Your ability to navigate it does. And that's what we need to accept. So you need to start coming out of that picture frame and start asking the question, well, if I'm the common denominator, what am I going to do about it? And it's hard. It is so hard to accept the fact that we are the masters of our own fate, which is incredibly cheesy, but it is. But what I'm talking about is like the moment by moment playbook of our life when we wake up in the morning. It's making that decision. Like, are we going to actually make decisions, and are we going to take action in the way that we are proud of the life that we're building? And this is why I think we're so focused on happiness. I'm going to wake up, I just want to be happy today. Happiness is the result. It's like the cherry on top of the sundae if you start making life choices that you're proud of. So this could be, I'll give a benign example. I worked with this is many, many years ago, this incredibly high-powered executive woman. She came to me, she wanted to lose weight, right? Started talking to her, and I'm like, well, tell me about your routine, yada, yada, yada. And she's like, I come home, I just freaking hate my job, and I just eat. I sit in front of the TV, and I just tell myself, I should be eating better, I should be going to the gym. So I said, well, what do you do? Like, what do you love doing? What's your flow state? And she's like, I love building tetrariums. These are where you put plants in the dome, this and that. So I said, just do it once a week. For shits and giggles, right? You probably know where this story is going. She started building them. She started selling them to friends and family. She quit her job. She ended up building like a booming business. Lo and behold, the weight came off. Was it a hard step to give up a 6-figure salary, cushy position? Yes. Was her life immediately happy? Absolutely not. Did she wake up and was she proud of the person that she was and the decisions she made, the hard decisions that she had to make to build that life? Absolutely, yes. This is such a tangent. But the point being, whatever your original question was, is when you start realizing that you could change your life, is when you start, there's a saying in Yiddish, kvetch. To kvetch. Kvetch means to complain a lot. Hey, it's too rainy. Hey, it's too sunny. Everything is always wrong. When we stop kvetching and we start asking the question, is this decision, is this action that I'm about to do, is something that I'm actually proud of?
So for you, as well as for the example of the woman that you gave, it was the sort of the almost the daily grind, right? The daily questioning, the daily doing of
Yes.
something, right? And I know from my studies, my undergrad work, I took a course, Zen painting and poetry. And Zen Buddhist monks, they do the circular paintbrush stroke, and they do it over and over, and that gets them to the point where they are doing that repetitively and almost unconsciously, so that their mind can wander to other more important things, and maybe they can achieve that moment of enlightenment. And so what you're saying is that in these two stories, you just constantly sort of ask yourself, why are things not working, or what is it that I can be doing? So this one conversation you had with your friend Luigi is about, why is it always me? And then maybe at a certain point you start to get some of the answers. I guess I'm trying to ask somebody who's listening now who thinks that they're a people pleaser, what should they be doing to sort of take that first step to try and break the cycle so that they're no longer that people pleaser?
How many times have you wanted to say something and you don't?
Oh, of course.
Many, many times.
Yes.
And I mean from a people-pleasing side, not from I'm going to tell you, MO, that kind of thing.
Right.
But have you ever noticed that we're really, really good at winning arguments in the shower? But 24 hours later?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like the shampoo bottles
should
are
have
all
said
going,
that.
"Oh, yes, amazing, right? So the question is why? Why do we suppress our discomfort for the comfort of others? I think that's a very simple but very difficult question to answer, is why? Like, where do we learn it from? Did you grow up in a household when things were like sort of brushed under the carpet? For me, absolutely. I'd never ever seen an argument at all. So if you don't grow up with conflict, you just think it's bad, right? So I think it's that, how, I'll give you another example. My partner, he will eat conflict for dessert. No problem whatsoever. I mean, he almost like just goes after it. No problem. I'm the opposite. So what we do is we have this like technique where I say pickled onion. Why pickled onion is because he loves pickled onion. So I say pickled onion. I need to have a pickled onion conversation with you. And that tells him I'm freaking out. I'm thinking that the world is going to end because I need to talk to him about something. So in my mind, I'm literally, when you see like the Giphies of the world blowing up, that's going on in my mind. So it tells him, okay, she's freaking out. I need to take just a breath, because he goes into lawyer mode, right? And then I just offload what I need to say, and then we have a kosher conversation. The point being is I need to recognize that me holding into this and creating these scenarios in my head and taking these 8-hour-long showers where I'm like, I'm going to tell you, is not getting me anywhere.
Right.
And then having the 2 a.m. conversations with yourself. And I know that's a learned behavior for nearly 48 now. I mean, that's a pretty ingrained behavior to not speak up. So it takes a long time.
So what is it that, again, I'm going to ask again, what is it that somebody can do, though? Is it something as basic as recognizing?
Recognizing, yeah.
Right.
So in what situations are you not speaking up, and why? I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I know my wife and I, we've been married for 34 years now. And early on, I would say after 2 or 3 years, we started to recognize, okay, is this one of those you're venting and I'm just listening?
Yeah.
Or is this one of those where you're speaking and you want like some feedback? And that, I think, maybe it's a woman thing, maybe it's just a couple thing, maybe it's just a marriage thing. But you get to that point where you recognize, okay, this is one of those moments where now, of course, instinctively I know this is one of those moments I shut up and I just listen, right? And I think that that's definitely helpful. But so I want to ask you, your thing now is about helping people, I guess, recognize if they're a people pleaser, or people who recognize that they are and they want to break the cycle or stop being that. How is it that you work with them to get them to feel, as one of the rapid fire questions, what is it that, the last thing that you did that you said no to and you felt no guilt? What is it that you do with people so that they can get to that point where they're comfortable saying no?
So I don't do any coaching. I used to a long time ago. I think there are amazing coaches out there. It's just not something that I offer. My big thing is storytelling. I think storytelling is so incredibly impactful because while the story is quote unquote about me, it's not about me. I gave a keynote yesterday and there's a lady that came up afterwards and she said, I could have been like you. Like, that's everything that you just said. I basically had the exact same stories. And sometimes when people see themselves in that story, they start to understand themselves more. So storytelling to me is everything. So it's funny that you asked that, because for many, many years I had a speaking coach. This is many years ago. And she said, you have to tell people what to do. You have to give them checklists. You have to give them actionable points. How to stop being a people pleaser 101. And that never sat right with me, because when it comes to self-respect, the operative word here is self. I think people know what they need to do. People know that they're a people pleaser. They know they need to speak up. They know they have to say no. They know they have to walk away. They know they have to walk towards whatever that is. The question is why? Why don't we do the things that we know we know we need to do to be less of a people pleaser? And so that's why I don't recoil. I just sort of step back, because I think there's enough teachings out there. I don't think that really empowers a person to change if they're just told, here's what you need to do. I ask open-ended questions, like, what stories do you tell yourself around risks that serve as both a shield and a cage? Shield that protects you against criticism and harm, but also a cage that keeps you stuck. What past mistakes do you need to let go of and forgive yourself for, so you can learn and grow? I call them the ossobuco questions. These are, I don't know, I love to cook. So, you fry an ossobuco, you taste it, maybe half an hour later, it's good. It's not so good though, right? Leave it for an hour, a little bit better. 8 hours, beautiful. These are the kind of questions that you just have to let simmer and percolate. At the end of the day, the reason why I'm sitting in this chair and doing what I do is nothing to do with someone taught me. It's just figuring out things, knowing that I'm the common denominator. My dad has never ever given me advice. He is my be-all and end-all. Like, I literally have Love Dad on my arm. He has never given me advice. He's always said, have you considered? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? And I think we disempower people with these downloadable PDFs. Clearly, I'm in a soapbox now, so I'll step off in 2 seconds. But I don't think we need another downloadable PDF that gives you 1, 2 step, 1, 2, 3. I think we're smarter than that. The people that I talk to are highly capable. These are CEOs, they're multimillionaires, they're people who have done incredible things with their life. They know what they need to do. Figure it the frig out.
So they're in the audience listening to you talk about this, and they knew what they were going to be hearing when they came. Like,
Yeah.
did they want to change?
Yeah, you mean, were they shackled?
Well, is it one of those things where they go for one thing and they get something else? Or is it that something within them, for most of your audience members, that they would think, oh, this could be interesting? Or is there, maybe there's that first awareness that I need to do some changing?
It's funny, because oftentimes people ask me, do you talk to women or men, or both? And I say, I talk to a psychodemographic, not a demographic. These are people that know they want to be here. For some reason, they're here, and something's getting in the way. Lo and behold, it's them. So how can they get out of their own way so they can achieve what they want to achieve a little bit faster? And when I say achieve, I'm using that very broadly,
Sure.
right? Like, whether it's achieve a better relationship, achieve a better business, doesn't matter. It's the same with me. Like, how do you realize you're the common denominator and get out of the way? At the end of the day, I don't know who said this quote, but you could be the juiciest peach in the world. Some people don't like peaches, right? And listen, don't get me wrong. When I finish giving a talk, do I want everyone in the audience to love me? Yes, I do, of course. But I played that game before. Where I spoke about the science, being a woman in STEM, graduating biotechnology, in that era of, you studied science, talk about the science. I even had a coach tell me, you're a PhD, speak like a PhD. And a lot of those talks did very well. I've never felt so empty inside in my entire life, like to the point of tears. So the reason why I say this is, when people sit in the audience, I'm not going to be for everyone, and it's not going to be the right timing for everyone. But what I do promise is that there's going to be something in there that either, if you can't take away, someone else that can.
So what do you do in a situation? I want to ask I guess a question that I can relate to, because it's something that I've gone through. and I won't name where it was, but I'm confident. I don't think I'm arrogant. And I think I know my job well. And yet I am the first person to take ideas from somebody who's working with us as an intern or somebody who's been, doing the job for 20 years. I'd like to think that I'm approachable. What do you do, though, when you have the confidence, but you have an insecure boss? And he/she is threatened by just your manner. Is it, to take it to the extreme, is it you just accept that at a certain point you're going to have to quit or you're going to get fired? Or do you try to somehow muddle your way through it, knowing that it's probably going to be a mess until that inevitable day comes?
I'll flip it and I'll answer it.
Sure.
So after a keynote, someone asked me, I'm working with a narcissist. How do I help them understand that they're a narcissist?
I don't think you can.
My answer was 2 words: you don't. So the short answer is you have 2 feet, you can walk. That's the easiest way. I think oftentimes, and this is where the people pleasing gets a bit like, I want to help you, but what about the person? Are you going to dedicate all your life to help a person that perhaps doesn't even want to be helped? Why do they have low confidence in the first place? I know that timing is a huge thing. If someone were to have come to me 20 years ago and said, this is what's wrong with you, here's what you can do, I would have been like, who are you talking about? That sounded very Canadian, actually.
Yes, it did. Even to my mind, in my ear, that sounded Canadian.
You can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink.
Right.
I think we are so focused on, helping people, and it's your life. It could end like this.
Yes, but in the day-to-day situation, you've got a good job, it's a good title, it pays well.
It's not that good, clearly.
Well, so you measure good by different things, right?
Okay.
So I would say it's in the right profession, it's a good title, it pays really well, benefits are good, gives you prestige, whatever it is that matters to you, it gives you some of those things. And yet, I feel like in one job I had, I'm not just managing my team, I'm having to manage my boss. And you go home at the end of the day and it's like, why the heck am I having to manage the guy who's more senior than I am, is earning more money than I am, and yet my job is to manage his insecurities. And so you say you have 2 feet and you can walk, absolutely, but 80% of the job is great. 20% sucks, and it's my boss, and he's going to fire me at some point. I guess I just have to accept that.
Control the controllables.
But how do you do that? So you make the decision to leave before you get fired, but the end result is the same, right? That you're
Let's
without
go
the
to
job.
a specific situation. So like maybe give you, like we're around the boardroom table, whatever, and people are bringing up ideas, let's say. And then do you bring up an idea and then how does the boss react to that?
So this is, I want to be careful because it was a company here. Okay. It was not that long ago. But this is the issue that I felt, is that we never had disagreements. Well, I shouldn't say that. There were 2 small, what I would characterize as small disagreements in 6 months. And there were moments where I can remember having this conversation with him and I said, I like my job. This is what I said, because I've said this for, a few jobs. I like my job. I like my salary. I like having a boss who knows what he wants or maybe doesn't, but is willing to listen to what I have to say. And then at the end of the day, we'll say, Michael, great, thanks, but we're still going to do it my way. And what I have always said with my team members is that I want people to feel comfortable making suggestions, but I think the most important thing is that people feel validated, right? So that they can speak up. I don't think people need their ideas always taken on board. They just need to be able to have the freedom to share them, right? Absolutely. So this is what I would say. This is what I said to him. And I said, but at the end of the day, I like my job. So if you want to go with what you want, that's cool. I just like the opportunity to be able to share. And then there came a day when I did get fired. And his insecurity, he'd been in the country 6 months. I'd been at the time 21 years. So he wasn't going to be able to teach me too much about the business, but maybe there would have been opportunities to teach me more about the commercial side of the business, which is not something that I knew a lot about. And for whatever reason, he didn't want to take that. So in that situation, that's pretty much me being as clear as I can be without giving away too much more. That was where I found it incredibly frustrating that he had concerns about me, either as a person or as a subordinate or as a colleague, and never shared them. And yet it was my responsibility when we met every week, to go in and to get a sense of what's his mood like, what does he want to talk about, what's he focused on, what is the hidden message. I feel like I'm the one that's being the guest here on my own podcast. What is the hidden message that I should be picking up on that's going to make him feel more comfortable with me so that I keep my job?
You know what this reminds me of?
Tell me.
An abusive relationship.
Who is abusing who, though?
Well, you're tiptoeing, worrying about the behavior of someone else. So you started to change who you were to compensate because you didn't know how this other person was going to react.
Yeah, because he was a terrible communicator.
But it's very, listen, I'm not trying to, please understand that I'm not trying to compare it to domestic violence or anything like that. But on a very, very minute scale, you changing who you are, adapting how you're going to approach things, like how you're going to say, what you're going to propose, is this the right time? Very similar to someone coming home and saying, oh, what mood is he or she in? Should I bring up the fact that, we don't have enough money for so-and-so or forgot?
So in that situation, if we were friends or partners, and I was sharing all of this with you, what would you have said to me when I come home and I sort of unload like that? What would you have said?
Sounds to me that you did everything that you can. It was a question that you had to answer in regards to, have you tried your best to make the relationship work without overextending yourself? And that sounds like you were on the precipice of doing so, starting to become someone you're not, to please and appease someone else. It almost sounds like the fawn response. Have you heard of that? Fawn response, oh gosh, my academic brain is not going to go there. What was his name? Anyways, people can look it up. It's called the fawn response, where it's a reaction to trauma where you please and appease. It's almost like, and I don't want to genderify this, dad comes home, he slams the door.
Right.
Jimmy's doing homework at the table. Jimmy immediately knows what he can and cannot get away with. Dad comes home the next day, closes the door. Oh, hey, Jimmy, rushes like Jimmy's hair and says, how was your day at school? Jimmy immediately knows what kind of night that's going to happen. Sounds very similar to your situation where you change your behavior and how you approach things based on someone else's energy, emotions.
So should I have been more assertive and left the job earlier?
Do you feel like you could have done anything in this instant to change the person that he was, to make him understand your point of view?
No. And this is, and maybe as a guy, I understand this. Like, there's no hatred on my part towards him. There's no animosity. So I'm going to use a hockey analogy.
Okay. As long as it's not offside, because 48 years, I still don't understand.
No, so it's very general. But the basic premise is that you have the coach who is behind the bench leading the team, and that would have been me. And then you have the general manager, who is the one who makes the trades, hires and fires the coach. And that would have been my boss. And in this particular situation, it's very conducive to that male environment. I'm going to say it's a male environment. It might not be just a male environment. But I had been there for a year when he came in. I wasn't his guy. He needed to get rid of me and bring in his guy. So I get that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it was something as basic as after I left and he found a replacement, it was interviewing several people till he found his guy, right? And that's the one where he was comfortable with. So I don't think that there was anything, in answer to your question, that I could have done. I think it might have worked out really well if I had been his guy.
There you have it.
Right.
To thine own self be true.
Yeah.
So that's what self-respect really is. So I think what's important to recognize about confidence and arrogance, because it almost sounds like this guy's arrogant, even though you're saying that he's not confident, which is
No, I'm not saying he's not confident. So my word, he's insecure.
insecure. Okay, which sometimes comes across as arrogance for protection. My way or the highway. But regardless, self-respect is I know I'm important in this situation. Arrogance is I'm more important than you.
Okay.
So I think that's a pretty clear differentiating factor here, which is my way or the highway. So I think what we want to know at the end of our life is that we did whatever we could to right or wrong. And it sounds to me that if you had to answer that question on a binary scale, yes or no, the answer would be yes.
So you've had, I want to get back to you now because I feel I've spoken too much. You've had different, would you call them different careers?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so.
Different personalities.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything.
When you were in the business world and very senior in management, would you say it's tougher? And this is a question that I think you can answer now at 48, having had experiences. Is it tougher to lead yourself or is it tougher to lead others? Because I think it's tougher to lead myself. I find, again, because I'm a sports person, leading others, and I don't even call it that. I refer to it more as being part of a team. And it doesn't matter if you're the best person on the team or, the fourth line person on the team, you all have a role to play, right? So is it tougher leading yourself and being thy own self be true, or do you find it's tougher leading a team?
I think it's situational, but I guess what's coming up in my head is, this word authenticity, which I think is drastically overused, and I was like, I don't know who I am, who am I? And I was like, well, first figure out who you're not. That's a good way to do it. So when it comes to leading yourself or leading others, I think if we can answer the question, who are we not? And I promise this will answer the question. It's sort of understanding what your principles are. I don't think you know your principles until they cost you something.
Right.
You don't really know who you are until it costs you something. And so when it has to leading others, to be a true leader, sometimes you have to put those principles to the test. And that's why I think back then, I don't think actually I was a great leader. Because I'll give you an example, failure, the big term, but firing someone way, way earlier than I did. I should have, this one particular lady that was working for me, I should have fired her months and months and months in advance. And that's a lesson that I've learned the hard way. It was very, very hard to lead that person because I was too busy trying to be best friends with them. So in that sense, it was easier to lead myself than others because, I was just trying to be best friends, right? Is this answering your question? So I think it's situational for me. And I think it's, yeah.
I think because sometimes I'll get caught up in too much of trying to set an example and using the extremes as opportunities rather than the extremes being the extremes, whereas the opportunities are just the day-to-day grind, right? Where you're showing up and you're hopefully treating people with respect and whatnot. When you talk about, in some of the research that I've done about you talk about camouflage that was sort of there, or I guess you were wearing a mask of sorts. And maybe it's the journalist in me where I'm always looking for the headline, but is there that moment or that experience where you sort of recognize that this isn't either the real me or this isn't the person that I want to be?
I recognize when I found the real me. So the opposite side was when I give a talk, and great talk, medical talk, talking about implantable technology, talking about physiology, all this stuff that's really kosher, the HR checkbox and this and that. Great talk, great applause. But then I got sick of it, had an emotional breakdown. Highly recommend. Went to go see my. This is a bit of a long story, but to jump ahead, I remember getting asked by my university to give a talk, and this was in my that's fine, but I'm going to talk. And I prepared a few slides, but they were all memes. I'm a meme addict. And I just talked. I talked the way I wanted to talk. There was a 2.5-hour lineup afterwards to talk to me afterwards. Nice. I've never experienced that in my entire life. I cried, bawled the entire 7-minute drive home. I've never been that proud and ergo that happy in my life. It was, and my partner is going to kill me for using this reference, but it's kind of like you're holding in this massive bloating fart all your life, and then you just let it rip. It is so incredibly relieving to finally just be, this is me.
So this was you being authentic.
Totally authentic.
And it resonated.
Oh, yes. Yep. Indeedy.
And that's when you recognized, you were able to put one and one together.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
I literally get high thinking of that talk.
And that's when you said, okay, this is what I'm going to
Yep.
do. So it's interesting you say that. I've had 2 really good responses on LinkedIn, actually. And I've said this before, where I think I was a little bit vulnerable. I think I was certainly authentic, at least I thought I was in the moment. And those were also the biggest responses from the post. So my question that I often ask people who are successful in many different fields, as you have been, what is your biggest professional fail?
I think not firing that lady is one. I mean, I can tell you I went bankrupt when I was 23 years old for $250,000 starting a restaurant in northern Canada. But that's monetary failure.
But those are big failures.
They're big failures, but there's nothing. Have you ever had someone say, I'm so disappointed in you?
I was going to say I don't think I have, but then I remember a priest maybe. But I'll say I don't think so.
Okay. Most people have, their parents to say, I'm so disappointed in you. We don't hear that. We hear you as a person. You are a disappointment. It's like when you make a mistake. I don't think I've made a mistake. I think I am a mistake. And I think that, to me, is the worst failure of all, saying, I'm not proud of the decision that I made. I think that is lose $1 billion. Not that I have $1 billion. If I did, maybe it would suck. But if I had to choose between losing $1 billion and being really looking back and saying, I'm so disappointed with myself, that, to me, is failure, especially if you do it again.
A moment earlier, you had mentioned about recommending people have, or at least having an emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
Why?
I've hit rock bottom 3 times in my life. That wasn't the emotional breakdown. Actually, funnily enough, wasn't a rock bottom moment. And not hashtag, disclaimer. I'm not saying hit rock bottom. It's almost like you can't appreciate the sunny days. Sorry, you can't appreciate the rainy days if it's only sunny, or vice versa, whatever you want to call it. I think sometimes you have to. It's this too shall pass. Oftentimes we think of this too shall pass as just the bad times passing. We have to remember that this too shall pass is also the good times passing. So I think the emotional breakdown. It's kind of like. I'll give you an example. There's this, I don't know if it's a Volvo or a Toyota. It used to be this massive arm that used to come pick up a car, just random car off the lot, take it over to the side and shake the crap out of it to see what falls out. And then they knew what to fix. And I think that's what an emotional breakdown is. It's kind of like all of a sudden you're picked off of this weird ride we call life. You're taken over to the side, you shake the shit out of you. And you're like, okay, what is it that I have to put back together? Are these things, are all these trinkets and toys and houses and cars and friends and this, what do I actually really want? And I think that's what an emotional breakdown does. It says, what is actually really important to me?
And but it also helps because it's a low point compared to the high points, and it makes you appreciate both.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
You said a couple of times you talked about you didn't want to necessarily bring gender in some of the stories, anecdotes that you were sharing. Do you think that there is a difference the way that society treats high-performing men versus high-performing women? and are women? Sorry, let me.
Yeah.
Second part to that question, are women expected to be more people pleasers than men?
So I'll give you an example. Like, how many women that you speak to, they'll say, yes, I'm a leader. I think more often than not we say, oh yeah, we have a great team. We support a great team. We don't lead the team. You know, it's that just this fear of coming across as a know-it-all, narcissistic, arrogant person. And again, I don't like to compare because I've only had very supportive men in my life. I've been, knock wood, very, very lucky on this. But my partner is, he has no problems with confidence, let's just say that. So I remember I was giving a talk and we had prepared these name tags, right? Instead of the, John Smith Finance, we said, what is your word of the year? And it was like February, so it was still like that new year, new me energy. And it was a women-focused event and empathy, kindness, organization. That was a one word of the year. Fine, super beautiful words, very altruistic. My partner comes over and is like, babe, you got to do your name tag. So he goes over, trudges over to the table, grabs like the thickest, boldest marker, and I see him like going like this, writing. Comes back, slapped it on his chest, and it says win. And I'm like, that is so pertinent. We are so afraid of saying to the world that we are ambitious and we want to win because we think when we win, that means you lose. And I think, to answer your question, do we have challenge with it? Yeah, I think we do, because we don't want to come across as arrogant narcissists. It's like imposter syndrome. I think we know what we're talking about. I think we actually know we're smart. We just don't want people to think that we're know-it-alls. It's like, going back to grade 3, grade 4. You don't want to answer too many questions because then like the guy that you really like is going to think that you're a nerd, know-it-all. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. It's also, I bring it up partly, again, for personal anecdote, is that, I was working in another country recently, and the job that I had there, I was in my mid-50s, and for the first time in my life, I had a woman as a boss. And it was a wonderful experience. I learned an awful lot from her, incredibly talented. I also learned something that was, I think, very important. She said something once, and it was in relation to, I guess, giving feedback to somebody, which is not something that I think instinctively I knew how to do. And, you sort of read the room, right? And you know how this person would prefer to take it versus somebody else. But she said something that stayed with me, which is, tell them the way that you would want to be told if you were passing along the same piece of information. And obviously, I've had lots of men as bosses, but I've never had a guy boss say anything that stayed with me as long as that. And I think it's incredibly helpful. And it makes today, if there's a member of the team where you have to have a conversation with them, I think you and I could both relate to being younger, feeling like, oh my God, I have to have those awkward conversations with people. Now I have no qualms having those awkward conversations because I don't treat it like it's a win-lose or a challenge or a confrontation. It's like I'm telling them the way that I would want to be told. And so I think I go in with a healthy attitude.
Yep.
Sometimes it's really bad news, but I think for the most part, it's a great piece of advice that's stayed with me.
For example, Annika, who obviously introduced us to each other, when I hired her, when we had that initial conversation, I said, so here's the thing. That's my go for. I was like, I'm just letting you know in advance. I don't like to waste time. So if something is bugging me, I'm just going to tell you directly. You let me know. How does that work for you? And she said, I'm exactly the same. I said, bada bing, bada boom, good, done. So I tell people in advance because then I don't have to go through that like 8-hour shower conversation with myself. It's out in the open because I've learned my lesson before how much time and energy we waste prepping ourselves to have that perfect first word and the praise sandwich approach. So she knows if something's bugging me, I mean, that hasn't happened. I'll say, listen, remember that conversation we had we need to have that conversation. Done.
Don't you find, this is as an aside, that my time in the shower is incredibly productive? And I think it's because you're doing something that's so repetitive that you've done your whole life. And again, much like the Zen monks, your mind is allowed to wander. And I find it such a helpful meditative time when, you're there alone and you're doing nothing that's too exciting. And my mind I find it incredibly creative.
Me too.
Yeah, you as well? Because it gets you thinking about things that you might, one of the things that leaders often talk about is that you have to almost set aside time to think. And I think we think that we don't do that enough. And so when you're in the shower, there's that time when it's free to do these things.
Yep. Walking is the same for me.
Especially if you're with the dogs, I guess.
Yeah. If I'm not yelling at them. But yeah, exactly.
And because everybody loves dogs, what kind of dogs do you have?
They're Chihuahuas, actually. 2 adopted Chihuahuas, Eddie and Ezzy.
And the names came from? Did you name them?
The weird, like in our office back in Perth, Ezzy was Esmeralda Apricot because we thought her name was Apricot. That's a weird thing. And Eduardo Lockhart because I think he's half Spanish, half Scottish. That's totally made up, by the way. But
So.
Eduardo Lockhart.
Were you a Seinfeld fan?
Yes.
Do you remember the bullfighter, Eduardo Carocchio?
Yes. You're either a Friends or a
Yes,
Seinfeld.
100%. I think this is an online debate. I have not watched, I would say, even half of the Friends episodes.
Neither.
But
I'm
I can quote
hardcore
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think we'll end it there. Dr. Katherine, thanks so much.
Thank you.